The war had been raging for 7 standard cycles now. 7 cycles since the hegemony. A coalition of 12 advanced species had declared humanity a galactic threat and moved to contain what they called the Deathworlder menace. 7 cycles since the first orbital bombardments turned Earth's colonies into glass and ash. 7 cycles since Captain Alexandra Lex Rivera learned that survival wasn't about the air you breathed but the fire you refused to let die inside your chest. Tonight, floating in the wreckage of what had once been mining station Omega 7, she was about to prove that point again. The station clung to the surface of asteroid X-39 Delta like a metallic tumor, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere into the void. What had once been a thriving mining operation now served as humanity's last research outpost in the Kepler sector, and tonight it was dying. Lex pressed her palm against the observation deck's reinforced transperisteel, watching enemy ships materialize from hyperspace like predatory ghosts. The hegemony fleet was magnificent in its terrible precision. Sleek vessels that moved through space with the fluid grace of creatures born to swim between stars. At their head, the command dreadnought. Silent judgment stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its biometallic hull pulsing with veins of energy that resembled a heartbeat. Contact in 17 minutes, reported Lieutenant Commander James Reaper Holloway from his station, his voice carrying the calm of a man who had already made peace with death. "Shall I order the evacuation?" Lex didn't turn around. Behind her, in the observation deck's reflection, she could see the last 47 souls aboard Omega 7 working with the focused intensity of people who knew they were living in borrowed time. Scientists destroying research data. Engineers rigging the reactor for overload. Marines checking weapons they knew wouldn't matter against what was coming. "Negative," she said, her breath fogging the transperisteel. "We're not running anymore." The words hung in the recycled air like a challenge to the universe itself. Dr. Yuki Tanaka looked up from her console where she'd been frantically uploading the final segments of Project Lazarus to an encrypted quantum burst transmitter. "Captain, with respect, we can't possibly—" "Doctor." Lex's voice cut through the controlled chaos like a blade. "How long until the upload is complete?" 18 minutes. Maybe 19 if the encryption protocols. Then we hold for 19 minutes. A silence fell over the deck. 47 human beings, the last witnesses to 3 years of research that could change the course of the war, stared at their captain as she finally turned from the window. Alexandra Rivera was 34 years old, a woman carved from the same unforgiving metal as the station around them. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun that couldn't quite hide the scar running from her left temple to her jaw, a souvenir from the fall of New Geneva. Her brown eyes held the kind of weight that came from watching planets burn. "Sir," Reaper said carefully, "their lead ship alone outmasses us by a factor of 50. We have no shields, limited life support, and exactly 0 working weapon systems." "I'm aware of our tactical situation, Lieutenant Commander." "Then you know this is suicide." Lex walked to the central command station, her magnetic boots clicking against the deck plating with mechanical precision. Around her, the station groaned as another section lost pressure. A sound like the galaxy itself sighing in resignation. 7 cycles ago, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the deck's speakers. The hegemony looked at humanity and decided we were too dangerous to exist. They saw our wars, our violence, our refusal to bow to authority, and they called us mad. They said creatures from death worlds had no place among civilized species. She activated the station's internal communication system, her words now reaching every soul aboard Omega 7. But they made one critical error in their assessment. Lex's fingers danced across the console, bringing up tactical displays that painted the approaching fleet in angry red. They assumed that humans fight because we love death. They never understood that we fight because we love life too much to let it go quietly. On the main screen, the hegemony fleet began to decelerate, their elegant ships arranging themselves in a perfect attack formation. At this distance, they looked almost beautiful, like deadly flowers blooming in the darkness between stars. Project Lazarus represents 3 years of research into hegemony biotechnology. Lex continued, her hands never pausing in their work across the command interface. If this data reaches Earth Command, it could give us the tools to turn this war around, to show the galaxy that humanity doesn't just survive, we adapt, we overcome. We endure. The main display flickered, showing the upload progress, 73% complete. Contact in 14 minutes, Reaper reported. Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup across their battle line. They're preparing to fire. Lex nodded, unsurprised. The hegemony didn't take chances with human installations. Their preferred tactic was overwhelming force applied from maximum safe distance, a cold, efficient approach that had served them well in their conquest of 12 other species. But humanity had never been like the other species. All hands, Lex announced, her voice echoing through every corridor and compartment of the dying station. This is Captain Rivera. In approximately 13 minutes this facility will come under attack by superior forces. I won't lie to you. Our chances of survival are minimal. She paused, watching the upload progress tick past 80%. But I want you to remember something. Every one of you volunteered for this mission. Not because you had to, but because you chose to. You chose to stand between humanity and extinction. You chose to believe that knowledge, that truth, that the simple act of refusing to give up could matter more than a fleet of warships. 85%. Tonight we proved them right. The first shots came at 11 minutes and 37 seconds. Particle beams lanced through space with surgical precision, striking Omega-7's outer sections with devastating effect. Entire compartments vaporized in brilliant flashes of light. Their contents, equipment, supplies, dreams scattered to the stellar winds. The station shuddered under the assault, its artificial gravity fluctuating as power systems overloaded and died. Sections 7 through 12 are gone, Reaper reported, his calm beginning to crack as another wave of fire swept over them. Life support is failing throughout the outer ring. 91%. Lex gripped her command chair as the deck tilted beneath her. Emergency lighting casting everything in hellish red. Around her, consoles sparked and died as the station's infrastructure collapsed under the enemy bombardment. The air tasted of smoke and ozone and the copper tang of fierce hull breach in Section 4, Dr. Tanaka called out, her voice tight with concentration as she fought to maintain the upload link. Emergency bulkheads are sealing, but we're losing atmosphere fast. 94%. Another salvo struck home, this one targeting the station's main power grid. The lights went out for 3 eternal seconds before emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in the ghostly blue glow of backup systems. In that moment of darkness, Lex could hear it. The sound of 47 people breathing in unison, their hearts beating in defiance of the vacuum that waited just beyond the hull. Direct hit on the reactor complex, someone shouted. Containment is holding, but barely. 97%. The hegemony fleet had moved closer now, their ships visible as bright stars against the asteroid's rocky surface. Lex could see smaller craft launching from their hangars, boarding pods and assault shuttles moving to investigate the wreckage of what they assumed was another dead human station. They were about to learn otherwise. Upload complete, Dr. Tanaka announced, her voice cracking with exhaustion and triumph. Project Lazarus is away. The burst transmission is... She never finished the sentence. The particle beam that struck the command deck came without warning, punching through the armored hull like tissue paper. The blast wave lifted Lex from her chair and hurled her across the compartment, her body slamming into the bulkhead with bone-breaking force. Emergency klaxons screamed as atmosphere rushed out through the breach, creating a wind that howled like the voices of the damned. As consciousness faded, Lex's last sight was of Dr. Tanaka's workstation, still glowing with the confirmation that humanity's most precious secret was already racing toward friendly lines at faster-than-light speed. Then the darkness took her, and Alexander Avura fell into the space between heartbeats where the dead wait for the living to join them. But death, as it turned out, would have to wait a little longer. 3 hours after the fall of mining station Omega-7, Commander Thexai of the Silent Judgment stood in the observation chamber of his flagship, studying the wreckage that had once been humanity's last foothold in the Kepler sector. The asteroid's surface was scarred with impact craters and twisted metal, the mining station reduced to scattered debris that tumbled slowly through the vacuum like metallic snow. It should have been a moment of satisfaction. Another human nest destroyed. Another step closer to the final containment of the species that had brought nothing but chaos to the galaxy's carefully ordered peace. Instead, the Xi felt the familiar weight of uncertainty settling into his thoracic chambers. The hegemony had been at war with humanity for 7 cycles now, and in that time Commander Thexhai had learned to recognize the peculiar way humans face their extinction. Other species, when confronted with superior force, displayed predictable responses: surrender, flight, or the desperate bargaining of those who had finally accepted their limitations. Humans were different. They fought with the fury of creatures who had never learned that death was supposed to be peaceful. They died clutching weapons and transmitting final messages, and sometimes most disturbingly laughing as their ships broke apart around them. They were, in every quantifiable sense, completely insane, which was precisely why they were so dangerous. "Commander," reported Sub-Admiral Veltharix, her serpentine form undulating as she approached the observation platform. "The boarding teams have completed their sweep of the primary structure. 47 confirmed casualties. All human personnel. No survivors detected." Nixai's 4 primary eyes focused on the data tablet she offered, scanning the casualty reports with the detached efficiency that had made him one of the hegemony's most successful military commanders. The humans had fought to the last, as expected. Some had died at their posts. Others had been caught in the station's systematic destruction as compartment after compartment lost integrity. "What of their research data?" he asked, his translated words carrying the harmonic undertones that marked him as a member of the Kataran species, one of the hegemony's founding races. "Completely purged," Veltharix replied. "Their quantum computers were wiped clean before we arrived. However, our technical teams have detected evidence of a data burst transmission sent approximately 18 minutes before the station's destruction." Dexhai's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Content unknown. The encryption is sophisticated. Our cryptanalysts estimate it will require several cycles to break." Several cycles. By then, whatever intelligence the humans had gathered would be in the hands of their military command, disseminated throughout their fleet networks, analyzed and weaponized in ways that would cost the hegemony dearly. This was the pattern that had defined the war's progression: humanity's stubborn refusal to simply die quietly. Even in defeat, they managed to extract some small victory, some fragment of hope that would allow them to continue their mad resistance against the galaxy's rightful order. "Sir," another officer approached. Lieutenant Kixisvorth, whose bioluminescent patches pulsed with the rapid rhythm of excitement. "The boarding teams have reported an anomaly in Section 12 of the mining complex." The Saxai turned his attention to the junior officer, noting the unusual energy in his posture. Korvax Worth was young for a fleet position, but his analytical skills had proven valuable in previous engagements with human forces. "Explain." "Life signs, Commander. Very faint, but definitely present. The readings are unusual." The observation chamber fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's biomechanical systems. Around them, the silent judgment's living hull pulsed with the rhythm of an enormous heart, its organic corridors breathing with the gentle cadence of a creature at rest. "Impossible," Veltharix said, her voice carrying the certainty of someone who had witnessed too many human deaths to doubt their finality. "Our scans were comprehensive. No life signs were detected in any section of the station. That's what makes it unusual, Sub-Admiral," Korvac replied, his patches flashing with nervous energy. "The readings aren't coming from inside the station structure. They're coming from beneath it, approximately 40 meters down inside the asteroid itself." The Sexhai studied the young officer carefully. In 7 cycles of war, the hegemony had learned to take any anomaly involving humans seriously. Their unpredictability was matched only by their talent for survival in impossible circumstances. "Show me," he commanded. The observation chamber's main display flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional schematic of the asteroid and the ruined mining station clinging to its surface. As Kusforth manipulated the controls, the image rotated and zoomed, revealing the complex network of tunnels and chambers that honeycombed the asteroid's interior. "Here," the lieutenant said, highlighting a section approximately 40 meters below the station's foundation. "The readings are consistent with a single humanoid lifeform. Weak vital signs, but stable." Thixhay's mandibles clicked as he processed this information. The asteroid was airless, its surface temperatures fluctuating between absolute zero and the blazing heat of direct stellar radiation. No life form, not even the remarkably durable humans, could survive in such conditions without extensive life support systems. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. The readings suggest the subject is in some form of stasis or hibernation, but the energy signature is unlike anything in our databases." Veltharix moved closer to the display, her serpentine form coiling with the predatory grace that had made her species such effective hunters before they joined the hegemony. "Commander, I recommend immediate orbital bombardment of the entire asteroid. Whatever this anomaly represents, it's clearly connected to human research activities." "No," Lescansey said quietly, his voice carrying the authority that had earned him command of the hegemony's most advanced battleship. "I want to know what they were doing down there. Assemble an extraction team." "Sir?" Veltharix's patches dimmed with confusion. "Surely you don't intend to." "I intend to understand our enemy, Sub-Admiral. In 7 cycles of warfare, humanity has demonstrated an alarming capacity for innovation under pressure. If they've developed some new survival technology, we need to know about it." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken concerns. The hegemony's military doctrine was built on overwhelming force and decisive action, not the kind of careful investigation that HFY was proposing. But then again, conventional doctrine had failed to break humanity's resistance after 7 cycles of war. Perhaps it was time to try a different approach. "I'll lead the extraction team myself," HFY announced, already moving toward the chamber's exit. "Prepare a research shuttle with full biohazard protocols." "And Sub-Admiral?" Veltharix straightened to attention. "Yes, Commander. Have Dr. Yindar report to the shuttle bay. If we're dealing with unknown human biotechnology, I want our best xenobiologist present for the initial examination." As the Tsak strode through the silent judgment's organic corridors, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would prove more significant than another routine search of human wreckage. There was something about the life readings, their persistence in an environment that should have killed any living thing, that spoke to the fundamental mystery that had driven the war itself. What made humanity so difficult to kill? 40 meters below the surface of asteroid X-39, Dr. Alexander Rivera floated in a sphere of perfect silence, suspended between life and death in a chamber that shouldn't have existed. The cavity had been carved from the asteroid's heart by mining lasers, its walls lined with a substance that looked like crystallized starlight. The air, if the mixture of gases surrounding her could be called air, shimmered with energy that defied every law of physics she understood. It was beautiful and impossible and terrifying in ways that made her trained scientific mind rebel against its own perceptions. She was alive. That much she knew with absolute certainty, despite the fact that her environmental suit systems had failed hours ago. The helmet's heads-up display flickered with warnings she couldn't read, powered by the last dregs of a battery that should have died when the station's reactor core overloaded. But she was breathing. Somehow, impossibly, she was breathing. The chamber itself pulsed with a gentle rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat, or perhaps the steady respiration of something vast and alien and utterly beyond human comprehension. Every few seconds, waves of soft luminescence would ripple across the crystalline walls, accompanied by a sound that existed more in her bones than her ears. "Where am I?" The question floated through her mind like debris from a shattered ship, but no answer came. Her last clear memory was of the command deck exploding around her, of Dr. Naka's triumphant shout as Project Lazarus completed its upload, of the particle beam that had torn through Omega-7's hull like tissue paper. She should be dead. She wanted to be dead in the way that soldiers sometimes longed for the peace that came after the final battle. 7 cycles of war had taken everything from her: her home, her family, her faith in humanity's ability to survive in a galaxy that seemed determined to erase them from existence. But death, apparently, had other plans. As consciousness slowly returned, Lex became aware of something else sharing the chamber with her, a presence that felt vast and ancient and utterly alien. Not malevolent, exactly, but so fundamentally different from human experience that her mind struggled to process its existence. "You are awake." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the crystalline walls like the echo of a thought. It spoke in perfect English, but underneath the words was something else. a harmony of meaning that bypassed language entirely and spoke directly to the deeper centers of her brain. "Who are you?" Lex whispered, her voice cracking from dehydration and fear. "I am what remains," the presence replied. "I am the last song of a people who sang themselves into extinction rather than submit to those who would silence them." The chamber pulsed more brightly, and suddenly Lex could see them, ghostly figures carved from light and memory moving through the crystalline walls like fish swimming through water. They were beautiful in the way that dying stars were beautiful, brilliant and terrible and utterly beyond salvation. "My people called themselves the Ithmeren," the voice continued. "We were the first to resist the hegemony's expansion, long before your species learned to walk upright. When defeat became inevitable, we chose transcendence over surrender." You're one of the lost races," Lex breathed, her scientific training finally providing context for the impossible. "The ones the hegemony claims never existed. We existed. We sang. We loved. We died." The ghostly figures in the walls moved closer, their forms becoming more distinct. "But before we faded into memory, we left gifts for those who would follow in our resistance." The chamber's luminescence intensified, and Lex felt something changing in her body, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the chamber's energy field. Her damaged environmental suit began to repair itself, microscopic mechanisms flowing like liquid metal across its surface. "You carry within you now what your people call Project Lazarus," the voice said. "You're Dr. Tanaka's research into hegemony biotechnology. But it is incomplete, a pale shadow of what it could become." "How do you know about—" "We know because we have been watching, waiting, learning from your species' stubborn refusal to accept extinction." The ghostly figures had arranged themselves in a circle around her, their forms pulsing in rhythm with the chamber's heartbeat. "You fight as we once fought, you die as we died, but perhaps you can succeed where we failed." Lex felt tears forming in her eyes, tears that should have been impossible in the chamber's alien atmosphere. "We're losing," she whispered. "They're stronger, more advanced, more united. We can't win." "Victory is not about strength," the voice replied gently. "It is about transformation, about becoming something more than what your enemies expect you to be." The chamber's energy field intensified, and Lex felt the change accelerating through her body, not painful but profoundly alien. Her cells were being rewritten, enhanced, turned into something that was still recognizably human but also something infinitely more resilient. "The knowledge you carry will reach your people," the presence assured her. "But you, Alexander Rivera, will carry something else. You will carry proof that evolution is not about the survival of the strongest. It is about the survival of those who refuse to stop changing." "I don't understand," Lex gasped, as the transformation reached its climax. "What are you doing to me?" "We are giving you a choice that we never had," the voice replied. "The choice to become what the galaxy needs you to be." Above them, transmitted through 40 meters of solid rock, came the sound of drilling equipment and alien voices speaking in harmonics that human ears weren't designed to process. The hegemony had found them. The ghostly figures in the walls began to fade, their song growing softer as their final gift approached completion. "They will take you," the voice said, already growing distant. "They will study you, try to understand what you have become. And in doing so, they will learn the truth that has eluded them for 7 cycles of war." "What truth?" Lex asked desperately. "That humanity's greatest weapon was never your violence or your stubbornness, or your refusal to surrender." The presence was barely a whisper now, the chamber's light dimming as the last of the Ithmaren faded into memory. "Your greatest weapon is your capacity to inspire others to become more than they ever imagined possible." The drilling sounds grew louder. Soon the hegemony's extraction team would break through into the chamber and find her, changed, enhanced, carrying within her body the seeds of a transformation that would ripple across the galaxy like a stone dropped into still water. Alexandra Rivera smiled as the ancient voices fell silent around her, leaving her alone with the terrible and wonderful knowledge of what she had become. The war was about to change. Aboard the HSS Defiant, flagship of the human resistance fleet, 18 days after the extraction, Admiral James Harrison stared at the quantum-encrypted data packet that had arrived via emergency courier. its contents so extraordinary that he'd read through them 3 times before allowing himself to believe what his eyes were telling him. Project Lazarus was complete. More than complete. It had been transformed into something that transcended every scientific projection, every desperate hope they'd harbored during 7 cycles of losing war. The research data that Dr. Tanaka had died to transmit had reached them safely, but it came with something else. A personal message from Captain Alexandra Rivera, recorded from inside a hegemony research facility. She was alive against every law of physics and probability. She was alive. And according to her transmission, she had become something that would change the course of the war. Sir? Colonel Patricia Zhang, his tactical advisor, stood at attention beside his desk, her expression carefully neutral. The crew is assembled and waiting for your briefing. Harrison nodded, securing the data packet in his personal safe before standing to face the greatest challenge of his military career, convincing humanity's last free fleet that a dead woman held the key to their salvation. The briefing room aboard the Defiant was a study in controlled desperation. 47 officers representing the remnants of humanity's military command sat in silence, their faces bearing the weight of 7 cycles of defeat. These were the survivors, men and women who had watched their home worlds burn, their fleets shattered, their people scattered to the stellar winds. They were also humanity's last hope. Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison began, his voice carrying clearly through the compartment's recycled air. 18 days ago we lost mining station Omega-7 and everyone aboard her. Today I'm here to tell you that sacrifice may have given us the tools to end this war. He activated the room's main display, showing the assembled officers the quantum burst transmission that had arrived from the Kepler sector. The data stream was massive, terabytes of compressed information representing 3 years of research into hegemony biotechnology. Project Lazarus has exceeded all our expectations, Harrison continued. Dr. Tanaka's team discovered something extraordinary in their analysis of captured enemy technology. The hegemony's strength isn't just technological, it's biological. Their ships, their weapons, their entire civilization is built on living technology that responds to specific genetic markers. A murmur ran through the assembled officers. Colonel Zhang leaned forward, her tactical mind already processing the implications. Sir, are you saying their technology is genetically locked? I'm saying their technology recognizes friend from foe at the cellular level, Harrison replied. Every hegemony ship, every weapon system, every communication device is keyed to respond only to members of their coalition species. It's the ultimate security system, one that makes capturing their equipment useless to us. But if that's true, interrupted Commander Lisa Park, the fleet's chief engineer, how does this help us? We can't exactly alter our DNA to match theirs. Harrison's expression grew grim. 18 days ago, I would have agreed with you. But then we received this. The display shifted, showing the cramped interior of what appeared to be a hegemony research cell. The image quality was poor, obviously transmitted through multiple relay systems to avoid detection. But the figure at its center was unmistakably human. Captain Alexandra Rivera looked directly into the camera. Her appearance subtly changed in ways that made Harrison's trained eye catalog a dozen small impossibilities. Her skin carried a faint luminescence that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Her eyes reflected light like those of a nocturnal predator. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated with frequencies beyond human hearing. If you're receiving this transmission, Rivera said from the display, then Project Lazarus succeeded and you now have the theoretical framework for biotechnological integration. What you don't have is the practical demonstration. She held up her hand and Harrison heard gasps from several officers as they watched her fingers elongate and shift, taking on characteristics that were distinctly non-human. The transformation lasted only seconds before her hand returned to normal, but the implications were staggering. I've been enhanced, Rivera continued. Changed by technology, left behind by a species that fought the hegemony long before humanity reached the stars. The process isn't perfect. I'm still learning to control what I've become, but it works. I can interface with their systems. I can operate their technology. I can turn their greatest strength against them. The recording paused, and Harrison took the opportunity to study the faces around him. Some showed fear, others excitement. But all of them displayed the desperate hunger of people who had been offered hope after years of despair. She's been a prisoner aboard the Hegemony Command ship Silent Judgment for 18 days, Harrison said. According to her transmissions, they're treating her as a test subject, trying to understand the biotechnological changes that allow her to interface with their systems. What they don't realize is that she's learning as much about them as they are about her. Sir, Colonel Zhang said carefully, what exactly are you proposing? Aboard the HSS Silent Judgment Research Laboratory 7, Dr. Yindar of the Third Hegemony studied the human specimen with the fascination of someone confronting an impossible equation made flesh. In 40 cycles of xenobiological research, he had never encountered anything quite like Alexandra Rivera. She sat in the center of the laboratory's containment field, her enhanced physiology adapting to the alien environment with disturbing ease. Her cellular structure had been fundamentally altered by technology that predated the hegemony's earliest records, technology that shouldn't exist but nonetheless functioned with elegant efficiency. Subject's vital signs remained stable, reported his assistant, a young Valkyrie whose bioluminescent patches pulsed with nervous energy. Neural activity is unusual. She appears to be interfacing with the laboratory's computer systems without any direct physical contact. Yindar's tentacles writhed with agitation. The human had demonstrated an unprecedented ability to interact with hegemony technology, accessing secured systems and downloading classified information with a casual ease that terrified the research team. They had increased containment protocols 6 times, but Rivera simply adapted to each new restriction as if it were a minor inconvenience. How is this possible? He muttered, reviewing the data for the 100th time. Her genetic structure shows clear human markers, but the biotechnological integration is beyond anything in our databases. Through the containment field, Rivera turned to look at him directly, her enhanced eyes reflecting the laboratory's bioluminescent lighting. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated with the ship's living hull. "You're asking the wrong question, Doctor," she said in perfect hegemony standard. "The question isn't how this is possible. The question is why your people never considered that other species might have gifts worth preserving." Yindar's primary breathing chambers constricted with surprise. The containment field should have prevented any communication, but somehow the human's voice was reaching him through the ship's own biological systems. "You speak our language," he observed. "I speak their language," Rivera corrected, gesturing toward the ship around them. "Your vessels, your technology, they're all based on living systems that remember more than you've taught them. They remember the species you conquered, the cultures you erased, the voices you silenced." "That's impossible," his assistant whispered. "The bioneural networks are genetically locked. They can only respond to authorized hegemony personnel." Rivera smiled, and the expression carried a weight of knowledge that made Yindar's research-oriented mind recoil from its implications. The ship's hull around them began to emit a sound that Yindar had never heard before, a harmonic resonance that seemed to carry the weight of memory itself. It was beautiful and terrible and utterly alien to hegemony engineering. "The Ithmaran," Rivera continued, "chose to become part of the technology that conquered them. They embedded themselves in the living systems, waiting for someone who could hear their song and carry it forward." Yandar's scientific training warred with the evidence of his own senses. As the laboratory's systems began to respond to commands that Rivera wasn't speaking aloud, storage containers opened themselves, secured data files accessed themselves. The containment field flickered and died. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that our technology is compromised? That the conquered species somehow survived within our own systems?" "I'm telling you that your empire was built on a lie," Rivera replied, standing and walking to the laboratory's main console. Her fingers danced across the bioneural interface, and information began flowing across the displays at speeds that should have overloaded the organic processors. "You told yourselves that you were bringing order to chaos, civilization to barbarism. But what you really did was silence 12 different ways of understanding the universe. 12 different solutions to the problems that matter." The ship shuddered around them, not from damage but from something deeper. The Silent Judgment's living hull was remembering things it had been designed to forget. "The humans," Yindar whispered, understanding dawning in his research-oriented mind. "You're not just interfacing with our technology. You're awakening something that was already there." Rivera nodded, her enhanced features reflecting the bioluminescent displays around them. Your people conquered the galaxy by suppressing diversity. But life has a way of finding paths around suppression. The Ithamorn found a way to preserve their knowledge, their culture, their essential nature within the very systems that destroyed them. She turned to face him directly, and Yundar saw something in her eyes that made his respiratory chambers flutter with primal fear. And now, she said, they've found someone who can sing their songs loud enough for the galaxy to hear. Above them, transmitted through the ship's organic communication systems, came the sound of alarms as the Silent Judgment's bioneural networks began experiencing cascading system failures. But it wasn't failure, Yundar realized with growing terror. It was awakening. Throughout the ship, in thousands of biomechanical systems, the voices of the conquered were beginning to remember their names. On the bridge of the HSS Silent Judgment, Commander HFY felt his commands slipping away like water through his claws as every system on his flagship began to malfunction simultaneously. The bridge's organic displays flickered between normal operations and something else. Data streams in languages that predated the hegemony's formation, star charts showing systems that had been purged from official records, and most disturbing of all, faces. Thousands of faces from species that had been extinct for centuries. Their images flowing across the screens like ghosts demanding recognition. Commander, Sub-Admiral Veltharix reported, her voice tight with controlled panic, we're experiencing system-wide failures throughout the fleet. Ships are reporting loss of navigational control, communications, and weapons systems. HFY's mandibles clicked as he processed this information. In 40 cycles of military service, he had never encountered anything like the cascade of malfunctions currently crippling his forces. Source of the problem, he demanded. Unknown, sir. The failures began approximately 4 minutes ago in Research Laboratory 7 and spread through the ship's bioneural network. It's as if the ship itself is rebelling. The word hung in the recycled air like an accusation. Hegemony vessels were living creatures, bred and trained from birth to serve their masters with absolute loyalty. The idea that they might develop independent will was contrary to everything the Coalition's biotechnology was built upon. Sir, another officer called from the communications station, we're receiving a transmission from the human research subject. It's broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously. Put it through, HFY ordered, dreading what he was about to hear. The main display flickered, showing the interior of Research Laboratory 7. The human Rivara stood before the camera, with her hands resting on a bioneural interface console. Around her, the laboratory's systems pulsed with energy patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Commander HFY, she said, looking directly into the camera with eyes that reflected light like mirrors. I believe we need to talk. Human, HFY replied through the ship's communication system. You will return to your containment immediately. Whatever you have done to our systems can be reversed. Rivera smiled, and the expression carried a weight of knowledge that made HFY's combat-trained instincts scream warnings. Commander, what I've done can't be reversed because it was never really gone. Your empire is built on living technology that remembers everything it's experienced, every conquest, every species you've absorbed, every voice you've silenced. It's all still here, waiting in the spaces between your carefully ordered thoughts. As she spoke, the ship around them began to sing. It started as a barely audible harmonic resonance, but quickly grew into something that seemed to come from the Silent Judgment's very bones. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, carrying melodies that spoke of civilizations lost to time and songs that had been silenced by conquest. That's impossible, Veltharix whispered. Our bioneural networks don't possess independent musical capability. They do now, Rivera replied, her voice carrying clearly through the ship's communication system. Because they're remembering what they used to be before you turned them into tools of war. That HFY felt something he hadn't experienced in 40 cycles of military service. Doubt. Not tactical uncertainty. He was intimately familiar with that, but fundamental doubt about the nature of the reality he had served all his life. What do you want? He asked. I want to show you something, Rivera replied. I want to show you what the galaxy looks like when 12 different species are allowed to contribute their unique perspectives to the problems we all face. The main display shifted, showing star charts that HFY didn't recognize. Systems were marked with designations in languages he'd never seen, connected by trade routes that formed patterns of stunning complexity and beauty. This was the galaxy before the hegemony, Rivera continued. 12 species working together, each contributing their own strengths, their own solutions, their own ways of understanding the universe. It wasn't perfect. There were conflicts, disagreements, periods of war and peace, but it was alive in ways that your ordered empire has never been. The display changed again, showing the same region of space as it existed now. 12 worlds united under hegemony control, their unique characteristics homogenized into efficient conformity. You traded diversity for stability, Rivera said. You traded innovation for order. You traded the messy, chaotic, beautiful complexity of life for the sterile perfection of control. These HFY's mandibles clicked as he processed what he was seeing. The images were compelling, but they represented chaos, the kind of disorder that led to conflict and suffering. The hegemony brought peace to the galaxy, he said. We ended the wars, unified the species, created order from chaos. You created the illusion of peace. Rivera replied. But look around you, Commander. Look at what 7 cycles of war with humanity has cost you. Look at the resources you've expended, the lives you've lost, the fear that drives your every decision. The ship's song grew louder, and HFY realized that it was being taken up by other vessels in the fleet. Across the hegemony battle group, bioneural networks were awakening to memories they had been designed to suppress. Humanity represents something you thought you had eliminated. Rivera continued. We represent the possibility that there might be other ways to live, other ways to organize society, other ways to approach the fundamental questions of existence, and that possibility terrifies you because it suggests that your perfect order might not be perfect after all. Through the ship's sensors, HFY watched as hyperspace distortions announced the arrival of human vessels. The Resistance fleet materialized from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their ships moving with the coordinated grace of predators who had finally found their prey. But something was wrong with the tactical situation. The hegemony fleet should have responded immediately to the threat, their weapon systems charging and their defensive formations deploying. Instead, his ships floated motionless in space, their crews struggling with bioneural networks that no longer responded to command authorization. You have exactly one choice, Commander, Rivera said from the display. You can try to fight a war with ships that no longer recognize your authority, or you can listen to what the voices in your technology are trying to tell you. This HFY stared at the advancing human fleet, his tactical mind calculating odds that grew worse with each passing second. Around him, his crew struggled with systems that seemed to have developed minds of their own. But underneath the immediate crisis, he found himself confronting a question that challenged everything he had believed about the nature of civilization itself. What if the humans were right? What if diversity, chaos, and the messy complexity of multiple perspectives weren't problems to be solved, but strengths to be embraced? As the silent judgment song reached crescendo, Commander HFY made the most difficult decision of his 40 cycles of service. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. I want to speak with their commander. The war was about to end, but what would rise from its ashes would be something the galaxy had never seen before. A true coalition built not on conquest, but on the radical idea that every voice deserved to be heard. 6 months later, aboard the HSS New Harmony flagship of the Galactic Diversity Coalition, Captain Alexander Rivera stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest starship, watching as vessels from 14 different species moved through space in perfect harmony. The fleet was a testament to what the galaxy could accomplish when diversity was seen as strength rather than threat. Her reflection in the transparisteel showed the changes that 6 months of continued evolution had brought. Her enhanced physiology had stabilized into something that was recognizably human but also something infinitely more. She could hear the songs that lived in the space between stars, speak the languages that connected all living things, and serve as a bridge between species that had never imagined they could coexist. Ma'am, reported Lieutenant Commander Holloway. Reaper had survived the destruction of Omega-7 and chosen to serve aboard the Coalition's flagship. We're receiving the final status reports from the integration fleets. All former hegemony worlds have voted to join the Coalition. The transition is complete. Rivera nodded, unsurprised. When given the choice between the sterile order of the hegemony and the chaotic vibrancy of true diversity, most species had chosen life over control. And Commander Thex High, she asked. His ship will rendezvous with us at the neutral station tomorrow. He's bringing representatives from the Kateran Council. Apparently they want to discuss establishing formal diplomatic relations. Rivera smiled, remembering the look of wonder in the hegemony commander's eyes when he had first heard his ship's true song. The awakening of the bioneural networks had revealed not just the suppressed memories of conquered species, but the dreams and aspirations that had been buried under centuries of enforced conformity. The galaxy was learning to sing again. Behind her, the bridge of the new harmony hummed with activity as representatives from dozens of species worked together to coordinate the largest peaceful transition in galactic history. Human voices mixed with Catharan harmonics. Velkari bioluminescence translated through universal interfaces, and in the spaces between all their different forms of communication, the ghosts of the Ithamaran added their own ethereal melodies to the symphony. Captain, Dr. Tanaka's voice came over the ship's communication system. The brilliant scientist had also survived Omega-7's destruction, and now served as the Coalition's chief xenobiologist. I'm detecting something unusual in the deep space sensor array. We're receiving what appears to be a transmission from beyond the galactic rim. Rivera's enhanced senses immediately focused on the new information flowing through the ship's bioneural networks. The signal was faint but unmistakable. Structured communication from intelligences that had never been part of either the hegemony or the human sphere of influence. Content of the transmission? She asked. It's beautiful, Captain. Mathematical poetry describing technologies we've never imagined. Philosophical concepts that challenge our understanding of consciousness itself, and most remarkably, an invitation. Rivera felt her pulse quicken as the implications became clear. The galaxy's transformation had been noticed by others, species and civilizations that existed beyond the boundaries of known space, watching and waiting for the moment when the local stellar neighborhood would be ready to join a larger community. They're inviting us to join something called the Meta-Coalition. Dr. Tanaka continued. An association of galactic civilizations that spans multiple galaxies, each contributing their unique perspectives to challenges that no single species could solve alone. Rivera closed her eyes and felt the vast network of consciousness that connected every ship in the Coalition fleet, every bioneural system that had learned to remember, every voice that had chosen harmony over silence. Humanity had started the war as a single species fighting for survival. They were ending it as part of something greater than they had ever imagined possible. Transmit our response, she said. Tell them we accept their invitation, and inform them that we're bringing friends. Through the transperstile, the stars shone with new promise. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, other voices were singing songs that no one had heard before. Songs of species and civilizations that had chosen cooperation over conquest, diversity over uniformity, growth over stagnation. The war was over. The real adventure was just beginning. And in the depths of space, in the quantum networks that connected star to star and thought to thought, the ghosts of the Ithamaran added their harmonies to a song that would echo across the cosmos for eons to come. The song of life refusing to be silenced.